You know when you're staring up at a bright blue sky, or maybe just zoning out at a blank computer screen, and for a split second, you think your eyes are playing some kind of elaborate joke on you? Well, welcome to today's Explainer. We're diving into the everyday mysteries of human vision. And trust me, you are definitely not alone in seeing things that aren't really there. Let's get into it. Seriously, have you ever noticed something just floating right there in your field of vision? You look up, and there they are, these little transparent worms or maybe weird jelly-like blobs. And it's so frustrating, right? Because the exact second you try to look right at them to figure out what they are, boom, they dart away. They literally vanish, only to slide right back into the center of your view the second you stop paying attention. It's like your own eyes are playing an endless game of hide and seek with you. Okay, let's dive into this. First things first, step away from the sink. Do not go aggressively washing your eyes just yet. I promise you aren't going crazy, and more importantly, there are absolutely no bugs, dust mites, or tiny creatures crawling around on the surface of your eyeballs. No way. What you're experiencing is actually an incredibly common phenomenon, but its true origin, it's entirely internal. The medical world actually has a pretty poetic, if kind of annoying, name for them. Officially, they're called muscae volitantes. That translates directly from Latin as flying flies. And yeah, they certainly look alive as they playfully drift around, right? Bouncing and changing shape with every tiny flick of your eye. But these flying flies are purely a biological mechanism living deep inside the eyeball itself. They are definitely not invaders from the outside world. So, what does this all mean? What are they actually made of? Well, prepare to meet yourself. These little drifters are essentially just microscopic pieces of your very own biological debris. We're talking loose tissue fragments, maybe some stray red blood cells, or even just tiny clumps of protein that have gathered together over time. They spend their days happily suspended in the vitreous humor, that's the thick, clear, jelly-like substance that totally fills up the inside space of your eye. And because they're floating in this jelly, they move when your eye moves, and they kind of bounce a little bit when your eye stops.
But here's where the physics become absolutely fascinating. You aren't actually seeing the tissue fragments or the proteins themselves. Nope, you're seeing their shadows. As this biological debris drifts closer to the retina, which is that highly light-sensitive tissue at the very back of your eye, it literally casts a shadow onto it. Think of it exactly like holding your hand over a table, right under a bright overhead lamp. The closer your hand gets to the table's surface, the sharper and more defined that shadow becomes. And this perfectly explains why you only tend to see these flying flies under very specific conditions. Floaters need a blank canvas to really show off their shadows. We're talking about an empty computer screen, a blinding field of bright white snow, or, most commonly, a completely clear blue sky. When you look at bright, uniform spaces like these, your pupil naturally constricts to let less light in. That constricted pupil acts just like a single stark, focused light bulb. And that makes the shadows of those internal floaters incredibly sharp and highly visible against that perfect, featureless background. Now, what's really interesting about this next part is that the visual tricks don't stop at shadows. There's actually another everyday visual mystery called the blue field entoptic phenomenon. It's quite a mouthful, but it's essentially the exact opposite of a floater. While floaters are all about internal debris blocking the light and casting dark shadows, this phenomenon creates tiny, moving windows of light. And these windows actually let extra light pass right through to your retina. Let's break down this microscopic traffic jam happening right inside your head. If you've ever stared at a blue sky and seen tiny, bright white dots darting around rapidly, you are actually watching your own immune system hard at work. Here's what's happening. A relatively large white blood cell squeezes its way through a tiny capillary on the surface of your retina, and it fills the tube almost completely. As it pushes through, it creates a gap in the blood plasma. This gap acts like a crystal clear window, letting a burst of blue light shine right through to your retina. Meanwhile, a dark tail of normal red blood cells gets stuck waiting in line right behind it. So those darting points of light? No way, right? You are literally seeing your own white blood cells moving in perfect rhythm with your own heartbeat. Now, before we wrap up, we do need to toss in a quick medical disclaimer. Most of the time, our brains are incredibly smart. They just learn to completely edit out and ignore these normal floaters and flashes, so they just fade into the background. However, if you ever experience an unusual, sudden, massive shower of large or numerous floaters that genuinely obscure your vision, please don't just ignore it. A sudden increase like that can actually be a sign of a serious condition, like a retinal tear, and that requires immediate medical treatment. So for sure, always listen to your body. And this brilliantly illustrates our final takeaway for this explainer. These little everyday visual quirks, the floaters, the darting white blood cells, they're a profound reminder of a really cool philosophical truth.
What we think we see out there in the world depends just as much on our internal biology and our mind's processing power as it does on the external environment itself. Our eyes aren't just passive cameras, they're living, breathing biological filters shaping our reality. So the next time you look up at a clear blue sky, are you really seeing the sky, or are you kind of just looking at yourself?